Hello, I'm Flora, and I have quite a lot on my heart and mind tonight, but thank you for being here with me, sharing with me. I'll begin with an experience that changed my life. It goes back about almost 85 years. I was a timid child, scared of a lot of things. You name it, I was probably scared of it. But one thing I wasn't scared of, which I should have been scared of, was driving, riding my bicycle fast down hills. And those were the days before helmets. Nobody wore helmets on bicycles except professional racers. I certainly never saw anyone wearing a helmet. Very dangerous. And of course, it happened one day, speeding down a hill on my bicycle. I must have been, between 12 and 13. A dog ran under my wheels, and I went flying. Fortunately, no concussion, but I scratched myself up in a very bloody way and dislocated and broke some bones in my hand. Well, of course, they rushed me off to the doctor's office, and my mother was sitting there in the office with me. The doctor hadn't come in yet. And she leaned over and took my wounded hand very gently in hers and said, "Darling, I know you're scared, and that's natural. But you have a choice now, maybe a very important choice for all your life. You can either cry, go to pieces, pull back, resist what the doctor's trying to do for you, or you can decide to take it in high gear." And she was referring, of course, to the gear shift on the cars we had then 85 years ago. In the state in which we were living, children could get a driver's license at 14, and I think without even a test. So she'd started young teaching her children exactly the mechanics of a car, what the gear shift meant. And I don't know how many of you out there have driven with a gear shift, but first gear was the high gear. That was the gear that gave you full power and full traction. And without it, going up a steep hill, or for that matter, down a steep hill, without it, you could lose your motor, stall, and start rolling backwards, or more dangerously, rolling too fast forwards. Take it in high gear, which meant full power with all your heart. And she lived what she was telling me. I've talked about her before, how she was left a young widow, her husband dying of meningitis. They had no vaccine for that then. And she was left to bring up her two tiny children, under 2, under 3, by teaching. Supported them and herself, barely. Those are the days before any kind of Medicaid, welfare. The government back then in the 1920s wasn't paying much attention to the plight of the poor and the widowed and the disabled, any of that. There was nothing of that then. A few years later, she married my father and faced health issues all her life, which she never allowed to define her. She always took life in high gear. And I'm glad she was telling me this at that point, because it was 1941, or early in 1941, and later that year, the attack on Pearl Harbor happened, and we entered World War II, followed by the terrible threat of the atomic age, then followed by the great fights, often bloody fights for civil rights. and the hard work Congress was doing to put through Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, disability, all the things we hadn't had earlier. Very great challenging times. And in my own life and in these threatening sometimes, wonderful times, I could hear her saying, "Take it in high, darling, take it in high," which meant to go with full heart and strength into a challenge or threat. Now this week, right now, our country is facing great dangers, unprecedentedly so perhaps. At this moment, as I'm talking on Saturday, the Senate is debating whether to put through Trump's bill that he calls beautiful. If it'll go back to the House and then to his desk for signature, and if it passes, over 1 million will lose their health coverage with Medicaid. Well, one congresswoman put it this way at her town meeting: everyone has to die. She actually said that. Then our senator from Kentucky, McConnell, I think just yesterday, oh, they'll get used to it. They'll get used to it. Two congressional figures, pretty secure in their own health coverage, I imagine. All right, that's going on right now. We don't know how it'll turn out. Then the attack in Iran a week ago today, with no input from Congress. Results, we don't know yet. Independent intelligence says probably we've just delayed Iran's nuclear program by a few months. Trump and his team insist total obliteration. It will never happen again. I don't trust anything he or his team has to say. In his first term, he has, to his credit, 30,000 proven lies spoken to the public. All right, striking even deeper maybe at the heart of America's meaning and purpose are the attacks on the judges and the courts this week. I think it was my fourth sharing with you that I talked about what despots try to do when they take over a country. One of the first things they try to do is first intimidate and control the judges and the courts. Then they can pass what laws they please and get to the point where any kind of public dissent is a crime by definition. Back in April, when I first spoke about this, the Attorney General said to the courts and judges that were resisting Trump's agenda, "We are coming after you." And indeed, they are coming after the courts. For example, this past Monday, the 23rd, the Supreme Court told all judges that Trump can deport to foreign countries any illegal aliens without time to make any kind of legal contest. On Thursday, the 26th, the Justice Department sued 15 federal judges in the state of Maryland for trying to stop Trump deporting people without any legal process. And to sue 15 federal judges was unprecedented. That was Thursday. Now on Friday, yesterday, the Supreme Court has curtailed the ability of all federal judges to intervene or stop the deportation of birthright citizens. In January, Trump signed an executive order to end birthright citizenship And now the Supreme Court, though they've not ruled on the constitutionality of that, and it is unconstitutional, the 14th Amendment makes that very clear, but what the Supreme Court has done is say, now you can begin to round up those birthright citizens and incarcerate them, except for the 22 states that back then in January immediately sued the government, trying to block that. This means that people who were born in this country, have known no other country, speak no other language, have no ties, can now, because their parents were not citizens, these offspring, no matter how old, you can be 100 or newborn, can be shoveled out of the country if Trump has his way. This will allow masked agents, the ICE agents, to go into homes, workplaces, schools, courts, churches, haul them out, handcuff them, and incarcerate them, getting them ready for deportation. By the way, some of those masked ICE agents, criminals are beginning to take advantage of this. They dress up like ICE agents, and who's to combat them? They're masked like the Ku Klux Klan. They can do what they please with anyone they please. Trump and his team lied when they said, we'll only deal this way with the worst of the worst. Only 90%, all of 90% of those being rounded up, 90% have no criminal record at all. This will also include people who are not illegal aliens, but who came as refugees under government protection in earlier administrations while their citizenship is pending. They've followed the rules. They're here legally, though they're not yet citizens. Nevertheless, yesterday, some of you saw, as I did, an Iranian woman coming in under their government protection program legally, following the rules, screaming in medical seizure, lying on the ground, while these toughs wearing ICE badges, surrounding her, grabbing her, handcuffing her, hauling her off. I'm thinking a lot about my grandfather these days. He was a businessman in upstate New York, wife, family. He and his brother uprooted their families, and many hundreds of others are doing the same back in the 1850s, moving out to the Kansas Territory to vote to keep it a free territory where slavery would not be allowed. Settling in very wild circumstances, they felt it worth it. But when the infamous Dred Scott decision was passed that said it's not enough for a slave to escape on his own, unless he could prove his parents were free people, then any slave owner could come after him and drag him out of churches, homes, courts, businesses. And so my great-grandfather, along with many others, of course, personally brought fleeing, escaping slaves over the Missouri River, gave them help, sustenance, clothing, money, sent them on their way to Canada, where they would be no longer slaves. Let's hope it's not going to come to this in our country. It might. the famous 3 ways of meeting threat, threatening challenge, fight, flight, and freeze. Fight, flight, freeze. I suggest a 4th, forward. There are times for each of these. Sometimes we need to fight. We need our police, we need our army. We need our own immune system, our white blood corpuscles, fighting night and day to keep us alive. At times we need to flee, or leave if you prefer that word. Toxic situations, relationships, abusive relationships. Get out of it, then decide what to do. Freeze is the 3rd one. I think I prefer the word fix or stand. Freeze sounds a bit panicky, like a rabbit caught in the headlights of a car. But you stand sometimes, not moving, deciding what's the best thing to do, assessing the situation. But then there's also the forward movement, when you decide it's time to take it in high with heart, soul, body, power, and move forward. There was a woman telling me some years back, she was a shy person, that it took part in a demonstration in her life. But when she saw hundreds coming up the street, peacefully, steadily moving forward to defend or call for some civil right, she found herself moving off the sidewalk, stepping off the curb, and stepping into the street along with this great moving body moving forward. And she said she felt a surge of strength, almost like from the center of the universe, a surge of power and purpose that she'd never felt before. I'm thinking right now of St. Patrick. He was 500 AD, back in the Dark Ages. The tradition goes he was kidnapped by pirates as a boy and taken to Ireland, where he was made a slave for years. He was able to escape, get to Europe, trained as a priest, and then decided to return to Ireland, where he was still legally a slave, to bring them his witness of the love of God, a different way of living. And I want to read you what's ascribed to him as his invocation as he returned to that place of danger and challenge. And I think every religion could join in this prayer, this invocation. I arise today through the strength of heavens, light of the sun, radiance of moon, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, the swiftness of wind, the depth of the sea, the stability of earth, the firmness of rock. I arise today through God's strength to pilot me, God's word to speak for me, and I call on this power to stand between me and every other power that tries to oppose my body and my soul. What a great call for our nation as we fight for its soul, as as we try to take it each in our own way, to take it in high. Thank you for being with me. See you later.